of the nest and let the royal capital handle it. Making an excuse, Saria explains that the royal capital refused to come because of their personal matters, which is why she took on the job herself. She's confident in her sword ability, believing that whatever it is in that nest, she can defeat it. Especially after receiving the report of the scout, Saria reveals that her opponent is going to be an elite ogre, and henchman monsters range about roughly 50 creatures apart from the boss. She knows fighting off the monsters will be tough because of their numbers, but it's not stopping her from going. By the way, even Gray admits that an elite ogre isn't strong, at least not enough to defeat a woman of her caliber. However, the thing about the ogres is that their unique advantage comes to their brains and overwhelming numbers. With so many of them in that nest, Saria's definitely going to die if they manage to surround and overwhelm her. Apart from that, our boy knows one thing with absolute confidence. Because of his knowledge of his previous life, letting Saria take on the mission alone is like sending her to her death. And in the end, the village will also be destroyed with no protector left. That's the dark future that he's already experienced before. With that in mind, the young disciple requests to team up with her. But his master isn't kind, stating that she's all good on her own. Instead of wasting time trying to convince her that she won't be enough, Gray cleverly tells her that he wants to gain real combat experience. He even goes on to guilt trip her, asking if she's afraid he'll become a burden in her path. Though he's smart, his master points out the ridiculousness of what he just said. Their skill difference is nearly identical right now, to the point that she struggles to fight him during their mock battles. Even with that fact in consideration, Saria reminds her disciple that a real battle is much more different, especially when you account for a monstrous nest like this one. This task involves immense danger, which is the reason she doesn't want Gray to risk his life, at least not until he has more combat experience. Her disciple is devastated to hear her conviction. After all, Saria wasn't budging in her stance. So he goes for one last resort, an idea that he wants to share with his master. At first she's surprised, until Gray straight up challenges her to a fight, promising to put her to sleep and then going on by himself to face the ogre. The situation grows tense. The disciple has just challenged his master to a real battle. His sword pointed at her. Gray awaits for her response. Realizing that her student is just as stubborn as she is, Saria admits defeat. She doesn't want him to go on alone, so she reverts to his previous suggestion of going together. All she cares about is that he returns in one piece. And yes, the one piece is real. Both of them band together and venture into the forest to confront the monsters. The night grows older, and finally, the master and the disciple discover the location of the nest. The intelligent monsters use their environment to their advantage. They made a nest that leaves no room for escape, in case someone dared to venture all the way here to challenge them. Saria thinks that the creatures must be confident in their ability, while Gray argues that it's actually more of a disadvantage for the two of them, as they'll have to fight carefully. Observing from a safe distance, she's rather surprised. The boss is nowhere to be found among the group, which makes her wonder if it's hiding in its tent. If that is the case, it's good for them, because this way, they'll be able to kill many of the henchmen before the elite ogre can confront them. To discuss battle strategy, Saria instructs her student to target the monsters from one side, while she's going to cover the other side. Executing the plan right away, both of them bolt into action with their swords in hand. The showdown begins. Before the monsters are even capable of comprehending the situation, the majestic Saria is already on top of them, executing a clean headshot, making a football of the creature's head as it flops to the ground. With the first monster down, the rest of them grumble and roar at each other in their language. The entire group is enraged and goes right into murder mode, preparing their weapons to kill the intruders. But it doesn't matter, as our boy is going beast mode with the way he's slaughtering the horde. This guy is a one-man army, cross-cutting multiple monsters all at once. The elegant Saria is all the same, showing off her impressive skills that she learned from Papa Virgil. The two of them are unstoppable. Gray and Saria perfectly cover each other's backs. Within the span of a few minutes, every single monster in sight is reduced to a body count for them. By the way, she's actually pretty impressed by Gray's unflinching determination in a real battle. He's never been more ready, warning his master to stay on her guard too. Here's the thing though, something about the situation is giving him a bad feeling. This fight has been too easy for them. Way too easy, in fact. Because if this is the level that Saria had to face, then she could have defeated all of them by herself, even without his help. And that brings him to a state of unease, because whatever is resting inside the tent, it's going to be much more terrifying than anything they've faced so far. Speaking of which, the creature's menacing pair of eyes beam through the dark tent, glaring at him from afar. The second Gray comes in contact with the creature's eyes, he shudders in shock. Despite his strength, he cowers and tells his master that they have to leave immediately. Even Saria doesn't get what's gotten into him all of a sudden. Without explaining anything, he roars at her to run, with so much fear in his voice that Saria doesn't question him. She simply follows his instructions and bolts right after him. As they're running along, you might be thinking that they'll escape. But nah, because their terrifying opponent literally leaps over from the skies with a massive vertical. Gray is terrified when the monster plants his feet into the ground, confronting the daring humans. Saria's expression changes to shock, pointing out how the boss monster has personally come to them for a battle. But then Gray drops a bombshell that no one even expected. This isn't the boss monster at all. Right as he's about to reveal the location of the real boss, a monstrous voice roars at them from behind. This provocative roar unleashes another horde of creatures to chase after them. The thrilling noise is deafening for Saria, but for the ogres, it has converted them into battle-hungry maniacs. Saria shivers in fear, failing to comprehend her own senses. There's a creature more terrifying, more brooding than an elite ogre, and it's commanding the entire group. Finally, Gray reveals that they're up against an ogre general. He's the real boss of the monster nest. I have to remind you guys, they're literally sandwiched right now. On one side, there's the elite ogre blocking their escape. Going back isn't an option either because a large horde awaits them along with the real boss of the nest. Saria expresses her shock, fully knowing that they can't face a monster like this even at their level. Their only chance at victory is to kill the elite ogre in front of them to escape. So she does exactly that, by charging at the beast and clashing her weapon against his. Determined to win this battle, she exploits an opening and connects a sharp cut against the creature's body. Blood spurts out of the cut, and while normally this is supposed to be a good sign, her worries only worsen when she notices that the wound is healing again. Meanwhile, our boy is clashing against dozens of monsters all on his own, sharing his knowledge of the ogre general's abilities. Apparently, its roar significantly boosts the strength and recovery speed of the monsters. Basically, they're up against an elite ogre on steroids. Defeating even a normal one is so difficult right now that even Gray is having a hard time. Slashing one of the monsters, he tells Saria to cover his back. He instructs her to just delay the battle for a while longer, which makes her question what kind of miraculous strategies he's got planned. To that, our boy shares that in a situation like this, they've only got one objective in sight, and that is to kill the ugliest of them all, the bastard who's hiding behind his horde. The fight for survival begins as Gray clashes his sword against one of the monsters, reflecting his annoyance at getting surrounded and flanked. He deflects the slash and finds another raging monster aiming at him. He's cutting past the enemies, focusing on making a clear path in front of him so that he can get to his objective. In carelessness, however, he uses so much strength that it literally shatters his blade. This is genuinely troublesome because now he's left without the one weapon he's confident in. He dodges the enhanced ogre's downward slash and prioritizes his attention to drawing out his spare sword. Yeah, that's the smartest main character I've seen in a while. Carrying a second sword means being prepared. Anyway, Gray is worried that his blade won't hold up for long. Coming to his rescue, his master tosses her spare sword towards him, allowing him yet another chance at victory. With both spare swords in his hand, he has a better fighting chance. But still, even this won't be enough to kill every single one of these monsters. There's just too much friction in getting to the ogre general, while at the same time defeating its minions. Trusting his abilities, this man goes batshit crazy, unleashing a super speed slash across his enemies. His forward momentum is broken when one of the ogres tries to attack him. Luckily, he dodges and then quickly blocks the attack. The fight is fatiguing him, but he's still made significant progress dealing with the monsters in front of him. The ogre general feels threatened and decides to unleash a second monstrous roar. To Gray's horror, the strengthened creatures have just received yet another boost in strength. This guy is not having a good time, as he's struggling even more now having to deal with them. Gray realizes that the ogre general is intelligent enough to see through his strategy. Now that it knows what the human is trying to do, the ogre general keeps on roaring to provoke his minions to fight. Blocking one of the strikes, Gray pushes past the monsters to bolt right ahead. A horde of monsters is ready to welcome him. Instead of facing off every single one, he efficiently cuts through the ones that are directly in his way. But even that leaves him with scratches and injuries all over his body. The bloodbath is wearing him down as he struggles to race past their endless barrage of attacks. Letting his guard down, he gets tackled by one of the ogres and pinned into place. Things seem to be looking really bad for him because the ogres have him right where they wanted. Luckily, since they're so enraged, they've lost the sense to cooperate, because one of them slashes through one of its own kind without thinking. Gray internalizes that their strategy is to probably weaken his swords. While he's lost in thought, a Giga Chad ogre loads a powerful fist to crush his head. It's a do-or-die situation, and he clearly can't let himself be hit, so he uses his sword to mitigate the damage. But even then, Bro is launched into the ground with a heavy crash just from the impact force. Finding himself at the edge of his life, this man still tries to get up in his broken state. That's the definition of a badass. With the previous attack destroying his spare sword, now he only has one sword left. and dozens of ogres to slay, as well as their boss. Once more, the situation isn't in his favor. In fact, it's nearly impossible to get out of this. Despite experiencing a regression, he fully understands his situation right now. Gray simply can't win, not against so many bloodthirsty monsters wearing him down. So he decides to switch his battle strategy, roaring at his master to run away while he can still make himself a decoy for her escape. Saria hears this and smiles, refusing to treat him like that. She's still facing off against the strengthened elite ogre, but Gray doesn't get why she's still determined to fight. He assures her to run away as he'll catch up soon after. But Saria refuses his suggestion, horrifically revealing that she has lost her ability to run. She's suffered a major gash on her thigh, reducing Gray's hopes to ashes. Even that approach is out of the question now. There's no other path left, except marching forward to his death. Swinging his blade in fury, he thinks about the reason why he regressed. Despite bearing such a heavy purpose, all of it is about to come to an end. Tragically, our boy's final sword also chips and shatters to pieces, and yet he finds himself in denial. Despite having lost his weapon, Gray refuses to consider this the ending to his life. If only he can use the power from the future, the terrifying ability that matched the Liquidator and was able to harm him. If he can use it even for a moment, then these monsters will be severed to pieces. Strongly envisioning the feeling he experienced that time, he loads his broken sword, entering a meditative state. And when he reopens his eyes, Gray is no longer the same weakling he was before. A single dark burning slash eviscerates the ogres, turning them to ashes with his burning black sword. Even Saria doesn't get what's going on. But it appears that our boy is still under control, as even after tapping into his dark powers, he gives her a smile of relief. In the next few seconds, Gray cuts every single creature in his sight, including the ogre general. Even his master can't comprehend what the hell just happened. She's too busy having to focus on the elite ogre in front of her. But now that the ogre general is killed, the strengthening abilities seem to have worn off. Saria understands that now, she can easily kill the beast as it no longer has any capabilities to regenerate. Using a Walmart version of Judgment Cut End, she cuts the creature down, declaring that the elite ogre is nothing without its master. They won at last. Both of them managed to stand against all the odds and won the fight. Despite having miraculously pummeled through an entire horde of ogres, Gray still apologizes for breaking her sword. Saria tells him that it's nothing compared to saving her life in exchange. She collects the sword and wants to confront him for the technique he pulled at the end. But before she can finish her sentence, our boy flops to the ground, knocked fully unconscious because of the after effects, leaving his master to shout his name in concern. The perspective cuts to the inner mind of Gray. He questions his surroundings and spots nothing but a chained floating door in front of him. He's confused until the door releases the same kind of dark energy that he uses through his ability. A sudden realization dawns over him. This is his very own power. He wonders what would happen if he manages to break the door open. After all, he could obtain the power and make it his own. Determined to try, he marches forth. But the moment he takes his first step, a deathly sensation looms over his body, frightening the ever-living soul out of him. And that's only after taking one step. Gray is so struck with fear as he retreats his way back. He doesn't have all the answers regarding the source of his power, but one thing has been made very clear to him just now. If he dares to provoke the use of his powers in his current state, there's no doubt in hell that he'll die. And that's not just a light claim, because the feeling is so horrific that it drives him to tears. From the void, a voice creeps in his mind, commending him for his decision just now. Before Gray can process it any further, he wakes up in a panicking state in his bed. His master's right beside him, glad that he's finally awake. Worried, he asks where he's at. She explains that she brought him to the village's infirmary as fast as she could. This dude was actually knocked out for 5 whole days, and I'm so glad that the author didn't say 3 days, like all the other stories. Anyway, she was afraid for his life, while Gray is having to cope with the fact that he had to recover for nearly a week because of the burden of the technique he used. Even Saria thinks that he went above and beyond in that battle. It was the definition of defying all odds. Still, she's concerned about the state of his body, and asks if he's capable of moving well. To test it out, our boy tries to lift his arm, but he can't do shit. He can barely use it after expending much energy, but with the way he is right now, there's no way he can hold a sword with an injury like this. Well, actually there's no way he'd ever be able to rub one off either, so he gotta fix this problem fast. Then there's the bruise on his arm, left after the battle. Saria grows concerned for his condition, knowing that he's unable to move his body well. Gray confirms that he's helpless right now. Even his master admits that his arm won't return to normal so soon, revealing that every single bone in his arm has been shattered to pieces. This revelation surprises our boy, because in a strange way, he doesn't feel any pain. That's actually thanks to the magic potion treatment he received. Our boy's jaw hits the floor. because these things are supposed to be really damn expensive, and she just used one on him. Saria explains that it's nothing to worry about, as the village chief personally rewarded them with it. The kid can't believe what he's hearing. He doesn't even know the village chief personally, and he's received a magic potion at his expense. Saria thinks he's dense for being unable to understand his situation. So she puts it in bold words. Gray is officially the savior and the hero of the village. Before he can grapple with what she just said, the village chief barges in to greet the boy, thanking him for everything he did. To point out the greatness of his feat, the village chief reminds the kid that an ogre general is so strong that it takes an entire town to fight against even one. That kind of creature threatened their village, and yet one boy was able to pummel his way through, carving a path and killing the monster, ensuring the village's safety. For that, the village chief is grateful. It's thanks to the valiant efforts of the boy and his master that their lives are no longer threatened. Unable to accept all the credit, Gray argues that they're exaggerating what he did. But the village chief thinks that it's him who is undermining what he did. Thinking about it for a moment, Gray reflects on the outcome. He thinks that maybe the village chief's words are right. Remember his previous life? In that life, this place burned to the ground because of the ogres raiding it down to ashes. That's the significance of his accomplishment. The leader of the village is more than happy to give him a long explanation on what makes him so great. But for now, he's focused on the boy's mission to pass the entrance exam for the World Union Academy. Speaking of which, Gray just remembered his true goal. He carelessly went to kill the creatures in the monster nest just weeks before his exam. With all the time that was wasted in between, he's only got 2 days left until the day of the exam. Oh, and by the way, just getting there takes 3 whole days on foot. His best option would be to use a horse to traverse the distance on time, but he's dead broke and doesn't have the money to afford one. Making a sudden request, he begs the village chief to lend him a horse for the journey. The good thing is that the leader was already expecting the kid to make such a request, which is why he's already prepared the best horse for his travels. Saria smiles, revealing that their original plan was to carry him, even if he hadn't woken up today. Some people truly support you despite your troubles, just like Gray's friends here, and I hope we encounter more of them in our lives too. Gray exits the infirmary, only to find the entire village roaring the boy's name and rooting for his exam. They want him to do his best, and they're not afraid of thanking him for what he did. The villagers even support him with a bag of money. Everyone donated bit by bit so that he can apply for the entrance exam and support himself at the academy. The boy is eternally grateful for the villagers, who showed him so much love with their support. He also jokingly states that it's going to be really embarrassing if he fails and comes back. But Saria is absurdly confident in her student, emphasizing that the applicants applying for the entrance exam aren't capable of beating an ogre general all on their own. But that's not the only concern. The boy is worried about his arm, as it's still messed up and there's no telling when it will heal. To that, his master argues that he should make use of his left arm in the meantime. Even though his left arm is fully functioning, it's just that he's more used to his right. But his teacher thinks with his skill level, it won't matter. Gray shares his concerns, stating that the level of the entrance exam may be overwhelming for him, to the point one arm will hinder him. But even then, Saria understands that the teachers or the examiners at the academy have a sharp eye. When they see his talent, they'll select him. The boy mounts his horse, while his teacher confidently declares that he's going to pass. That's the only outcome. Thanking her for everything she's done, he promises not to fail. Recalling how the village was razed to the ground in his previous life, he's happy that these people got a second chance alongside him. The world is already changing from this moment onwards, and he's going to make sure to influence the future with his new power. In the next scene, our boy finally makes his way to his destination. Staring ahead, he locks eyes with the grandeur of the World Union Academy. In the arena, the examiner announces the distribution of the exam tickets. All of the candidates will remain in the arena. From the looks of it, there's a large number of applicants, but only a tiny number of 20 are going to reserve a spot in class. They bicker about the changing number of seats each year, because in some years, the academy even accepted 50 people, while in rare cases, it only accepted 1. So the rules for selection aren't absolute apparently. Anyway, Professor Ariel takes the limelight and comes to the front. She addresses the examinees and explains that they'll have to collect the paper being presented. With a snap of her fingers, a vortex of yellow opens, releasing magical energy and automatically manifesting the tickets in each examinee's hand. Our boy collects his ticket. His examinee number is 513 for the fencing course. Professor Ariel adds that their ticket shares only the most critical details, but it's nothing to be worried about as the process is the same each year. She also confirms that the academy doesn't care about one's age or gender, their nationality or class. In other words, they quite literally don't give a flying fuck if you're an attack helicopter or not. They don't even care enough to know their names. The candidates who are destined to pass will be asked for further information, but for the total examinees here, it doesn't matter. Professor Ariel even confirms that it's fine if they offer a fake name, once again proving the academy doesn't care. Anyway, trouble seeks our boy again, because he came here without his sword today, and yet he's placed in the fencing course. It makes him question the system's legitimacy. Professor Ariel continues, hilariously stating that she assigned each person a course based on their looks. I know she's supposed to be perceptive or something, but it's just funny how 1 minute ago she was talking about discrimination, and then she goes on to say this. Ariel is fine with correcting course details in case she got them wrong. Even the examinees think that it's impossible to assign a course based on sight alone, especially when there's so many of them. They strongly suspect that the academy must have investigated them beforehand, so that's how they know. The possibility of mind-reading magic also comes up. Professor Ariel doesn't address any of their concerns. All she's noticing is how no one is complaining about the assigned course. So next, she decides to reveal everyone's exam schedule. The detail is imprinted on the ticket at once. Gray is nervous, because he's scheduled to have his exam on the first day, not allowing him any time to let his arm heal. Ariel reveals that this exam will only be conducted once and it will decide everything. If a candidate is late, immediate disqualification will be the only outcome. She also reminds them that their schedules are strict and won't be manipulated or disputed upon request. It's bad news for Gray, who is struggling with his recovery. He's begging for his body to pull a miracle and heal him tomorrow. The next day arrives, and what do you know? Poor Guy's arm didn't even heal a bit. He's got no choice but to take the exam in this condition. Gray's examinee number is called, and he frustratingly steps forth. He tries to calm himself in an effort to remain optimistic about the situation. Assessing his left arm, he doesn't appear to have any issues, and he can also move his right arm if he exerts enough strength. His current strategy is to sharply observe the examiner's moves and discover a winning strategy from that. He's watching a match between a candidate and an examiner. The applicant blindly rushes to attack, but by the end of his attack, the examiner is unfazed and casually stands, waiting for his next move. The candidate drags his sword for yet another slash, but even that strike is helpless. It gets blocked, and not just that. The examiner deflects his blade, before sending him flying with a final blow. With his body hitting the ground, the examiner concludes the result of the exam, instructing him to exit the venue. You guys might be thinking that maybe Gray has found something, but the hilarious part is how this man literally gives up and accepts that he's about to get his ass cooked. His number is called to step into the arena. Gray reflects his chances, realizing that he clearly can't beat an examiner that annihilated a candidate even bigger than him. Inside the arena, our boy is granted the freedom to make the first move. Despite that, he fully understands that this battle will be one-sided. Even then, he's got to make some kind of impression. The fight begins with Gray rushing to strike. He remembers his master's advice, who told him to make use of his entire body to deliver a potent slash, rather than just using his arms. Channeling her advice into motion, he thinks that the only way he can cope with the loss of his right arm is to use his other muscles instead. And so he delivers the first swing, which the examiner easily dodges. Even now, Gray finds himself struggling to fight in his usual style. After all, even though he's trying to make up for his right arm, it still doesn't change the fact that he's at a major disadvantage here. The examiner retaliates by trying to cut him down. But to Gray's astonishment, the sword is moving far too slow. It's as if he can read its trajectory without having to rush. So our boy actually blocks the attack successfully, still feeling the weight of the examiner's force behind the attack. At the same time, he judges that the examiner's technique isn't as refined as Saria. So if he can just focus on the techniques he learned from her, there's a chance he may be able to exploit an opportunity and carve an opening. With that strategy in mind, Gray rushes in full force in an effort to overwhelm the instructor. Oh, and the instructor is actually being pushed back. His speed is his own demise. Gray finds himself becoming confident, realizing that he can easily take down this examiner. The words of his master flash through his mind again. Their blades clash once more, but Gray overwhelms his opponent with a full deflect, ready to finish the battle with his new confidence.